the word BRICS currency is confusing. When people think of currency, they think of what they spend at the grocery store or what they spend on paying rent or buying a house. Nobody's talking about this kind of a currency. In order to have a BRIC currency, all the governments would have to agree, well, who's going to print the currency? And if there's a BRICS currency, how much is our government going to get? How much will others get? Will it be on the basis of population? This is decades off. And President Putin said that. What he said was, we don't need to create a single currency. What we need is a settlement system. He said, create financial logistics in order to ensure settlements between our countries so that we don't have to rely on the US dollar. Well, what this means is there's something like gold. Gold is not a currency. People don't spend it at the grocery store like they used to when they had gold coin. Gold is used among central banks to settle balance of payments imbalances. The question is, how are China and Russia, India and Iran and other countries going to settle their trade with each other? Well, if all of this trade were in balance, if China would send manufacturers, say, to Iran, and Iran would send oil to China, and that balance, this wouldn't be a problem. It doesn't matter what currency one uses because they'd cancel each other out. The problem is, what do you do when one country gets more than exports more than another country? What happens if Russia exports oil, say, to India, which is happening, and Russia gets Indian rupees, but the problem is, what's it going to do with the rupees? It doesn't buy very much from India. Well, what the BRICS are talking about is a BRICS bank that is an alternative to the International Monetary Fund. The BRICS bank will create paper gold, like the IMF created special drawing rights. China, Russia, all the BRICS countries and other countries joining the BRICS can be members of this bank. We're all going to subscribe to the bank. Just like for the IMF, you'll give, let's say, $10 billion for your subscription, or some proportion of your trade is a subscription, just like for the IMF. Either your voting rights are going to be based on the size of your prescription, in which case Russia and China will probably dominate it, or this bank will be every country gets the same vote, although they will be giving different parts of their different size of their initial subscriptions. Well, what's going to happen if countries run an imbalance? The BRICS Bank will then be empowered to create its own currency that is only used among central banks. John Maynard Keynes in 1944 developed a model for just this kind of situation. The situation today between China and other BRICS countries, Russia, is very much like the situation that I described in Super Imperialism for 1944 between Britain and the United States. Keynes said there's going to be a problem once the war ends next year. The problem is that the United States has most of the industrial power of the world, so it's going to run a huge budget surplus. And countries like England don't have much industry. We're not going to be able to explore much. So England, Europe, and other countries are going to be buying from the United States, and there's going to be imbalance. He suggested that the International Monetary Fund would create something called the Bancor. Countries would receive foreign exchange, like the United States would be receiving foreign exchange from Britain, India, from the sterling area, from Argentina, from European countries, would build up accounts in their foreign exchange reserves, meaning just like central banks have their foreign exchange reserves. And other countries would be running up a debt to pay for their imports that they needed to recover after 1945 as the world returned to peacetime production. But Keynes said the real problem of running into savings and debts is that debts really can't be repaid. once you let savings grow up, once you let a country run into debt, this debt that bears interest is going to be doubling and redoubling at some point or another, and you're going to have the same problem for the international economy that broke the international economy in part in the 1920s, when Germany and the Allies were in debt to the United States, and the United States said, we don't care if you're paying us for our World War I debts, bankrupt you, we want to get paid. And that brought in the Great Depression, and finally, German reparations and inter-allied debts were wiped out in 1931, or a moratorium was placed on them in 1931. Well, the same situation is today. It looks like China and Russia are going to be in the position today vis-a-vis other BRICS countries that the United States was in, vis-a-vis Europe and the global South after World War I. What are you going to do if there's a state of imbalance? Well, you're going to have something like China, like Keynes had recommended. China will probably be accumulating Indian currency and Thai currency, and but as China goes to the expense of building Belt and Road, ports and railways and other investments in other countries, these countries will have some kind of a debt to China. How are they going to be repaid? Well, ultimately, nobody wants a situation where the debts either to China or the United States or oil exporters are going to end up bankrupting countries. That's the dynamic that debts have. Well, there are a number of ways around this. One way is, instead of financing by debt, China and other payment surplus countries will take their payment in equity. In other words, for instance, when Japan invested in Canadian copper mines in the 1960s, it took payment in copper, not in Canadian currency. The purpose of China developing its Belt and Road Initiative is for other countries to begin to grow and to develop. And China can take an equity position in this so that it's paid out of the ability of countries to pay as part of the economic surplus that's generated. If there's no economic surplus, then the equity position won't be worth anything. But the problem is, the aim is to create an international economic system that doesn't bankrupt debtor countries. That's the whole objective of all of this. And if countries at present run as part of the dollarized system, then the dollar uses this international financial colonialism today, does what military colonialism did in the 19th century. It obtains foreign resources and conquers foreign economies and makes them subservient to the creditor nation. That's what you want to avoid a financial system doing. And that's the big, what's really shaping the way in which the financial and balance of payments, trade and investment relations among the BRICS plus countries is going to be restructured. That's going to take a long time to essentially work out.
南方为什么是南方？南方为什么是这个现状？我们到底将来会是一个什么样的发展方向？大家好，我是温铁军。我们准备了一个很重要的系列课程，统称为叫做南方世界观，希望大家适当的集中点精力，能够跟我们一起把这个5讲24节的课上下来。